Welcome to Duda, the leading solution for SaaS platforms that are looking to add websites to their services. Let's say you're a music industry SaaS provider. Your solution stores customer data, and you'd like to leverage that information to offer websites that are automatically connected to it. You can do that easily with Duda. Our API is flexible, well-documented, and designed with application integration in mind. You can use Duda's widget builder to integrate your solution once and then add it to all your customized templates, automatically including your service in every new website built. All websites can be dynamically connected to your system so that when information is added or changed in your product, the websites are updated automatically. Let your customers edit their websites in a custom branded experience. And with Duda's roles and permissions, you can choose what they have access to and what they don't. And of course, all Duda websites are fully responsive and can send end-user activity back to your platform along with conversion-driving analytics. And we're just getting started. Talk to an expert from our partner team to learn all the ways Duda can fit in with your business today.
Now, coming next is a very important discussion on how banks and the telcos must adapt to this fast-changing environment in order to fully leverage the enormous opportunity they have to be a trusted resource to small businesses as they go through their digital transformation journey. My colleague, Paul Plant, will lead a discussion with three powerful leaders: William Mzimba, the Chief Executive of Vodacom Business Group; Khomotso Molabe, who is the CIO of Standard Bank of South Africa; and finally, Lunga Sio, the Chief Executive of Telkom Small Business and YEP. Paul, over to you.
Fabulous. I'm delighted to welcome three A-list speakers from the African business community for this next session. They are collectively going to address the important questions and issues around how large trusted brands in the banking and telecoms sectors are going to support local businesses and communities as we emerge out of lockdown into what is looking like an increasingly digital dependent economic environment. I'm delighted to welcome Lunga Sio, the Chief Exec of Telkom Business, William Mzimba, the CEO of Vodacom Business Group, and Khomotso Molabe, Chief Information Officer at Standard Bank, Africa's largest bank. Gentlemen, you each hold very important roles in multinational organizations, each with hundreds of thousands of small business customers. And I want each of you to begin by telling me what specific measures your company is taking to support local businesses and local communities as we emerge out of lockdown. I'm going to start with you, Lunga, because Telkom has taken the very brave step of launching a completely new buyer and seller brand called YEP, right in the middle of lockdown. So tell us what has been your driving purpose and vision behind YEP and how it's going.
Thank you, Paul. It's actually quite simple for us, right? I mean, we deal with lots of small businesses. We service them as our own customers. We've got a significant base. We've been seeing what's been happening in the economy, but also we've been listening to them in terms of, some of their own struggles and challenges in essence. And one of the biggest ones is actually access to markets and actually just digitizing their own services in creating e-commerce stores. So YEP was brought about, into the market to actually try and solve for that, to almost simplify how small businesses could potentially create an online presence via an online mall and thereby getting access to a larger customer base, beyond their own physical footprint in essence. But what we also wanted to do was to almost aggregate services that they'd normally buy or on a normal course of the day outside of the connectivity business and almost like fight on their behalf in essence and make them available via our own platform so that we can lower the cost of doing business for those guys as well. And also enable them to actually just buy our own product, which is connectivity products, including IT solutions, and also digital marketing services via an online platform, and actually just support them and become their friend in this online journey or in an economy that's becoming digital in terms of how they transform into becoming e-commerce businesses. That's basically how we wanted to sort of help them. And we think by doing that, you can actually scale them. And by scaling them, you make them sustainable and they become significant contributors to the South African economy and thereby becoming net creators of jobs.
Yeah. It's a fabulous brand, and I love the coloring. It comes out of your yellow heritage, and I love the commercials that I've been seeing. So congratulations. I hope it really goes well for you. William, tell me about Vodacom. Your largest, you're Africa's largest service provider. And when I look through your corporate website, you talk a lot on your website about the need for small businesses to become ready businesses. What exactly do you mean when you use the term be a ready business? What is a ready business in today's age?
Yeah, Paul, thank you for the platform. Much appreciated. So, I mean, at the global level, at the Vodafone level, of course, we are part of Vodafone. We've always talked about ready business. And in the context of ready business, we talk about businesses that have already adopted digital technologies during this advent of the 4IR, and that they are working, leveraging all the aspects of the various digital technologies. And in fact, the slogan of a ready business has become really true and clear when we were hit by COVID, that those businesses that were not ready business, which means businesses that were not operating in the digital world, found themselves significantly challenged in how to serve the customers and sustain their businesses going forward. So a ready business for us is a business that is always on, always connected, and is able to run its business anywhere. And we actually have taken that as a way of orchestrating every bit of the services that we are doing. You've heard that we launched the partnership with the N Financials, and we are going to market with a very large kind of a platform that's going to enable ecosystem collaboration. We've taken a view that in Europe, Vodafone markets will become the SME champion, and then that in Africa, Vodacom will become the champion for the SMEs. And what we've done to that effect is started really taking some of the parts of Vodacom and exposing them to all our SMEs and all the new SMEs in the rest of the continent, following all the brands and the capabilities that we have there. So our own products, our marketplaces that we have, for example, what we have in our cloud marketplaces that serve SMEs, and also curating bundles of products and services and capabilities that we are provisioning to them in a digital way, that to be able to serve their needs from when they want to start a small business to when they want to finance the business. You know that we've launched Vodacom Financial Services a couple of years back, and we have more than 50 million customers now on our financial services platform. So we're aggregating all these capabilities now that a lot of SMEs have to rebuild their businesses. And we are encouraged by the fact that as entrepreneurs, they are now rebuilding their businesses, focusing them intently on businesses that are born in the new, that are born digital. And those that have survived this COVID world are now, we see them transforming or transitioning their businesses to be businesses that are now beginning to be physical, a bit physical and a bit digital, and also are needing a lot more capability to take their businesses online in terms of e-commerce capability. They now want web presence, they want domain name services, and many other digital related capabilities to sustain their businesses. So we're helping them with all of that and overlaying also our marketing channels on top of that to allow them to just expand their market reach.
I think it's interesting listening to both of you. I mean, we did our own research back in 2019 into the needs of small businesses around the whole of the Africa, Middle East region. And the top two needs of local businesses, number one comes out as the need for customers, and number two is the need for finance and access to capital. And of course, all three of you between you, are doing that. And to build on this sort of saying of the ready business, if I can come to you, Komatsu, and talk about, Standard Bank, one thing we have seen during lockdown is a huge shift towards e-commerce, and transacting online. So tell us what you're doing at Standard Bank to make it easier for your customers to trade online, to transact, and to become, to use William's words, completely ready for the digital world that we're now part of.
Yeah, no, thanks, Paul. Thanks again for having me. Before I kind of go into the specifics of how we are assisting small businesses online. It's important to acknowledge the current problem of just small businesses collapsing faster than the ability to actually create new ones because of the economic impact of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And it's important to talk about the measures that we have been taking in actually improving their liquidity position. Starting with just helping them by restructuring their loans so that they are able to hold on to as much liquidity as possible, because that is important to be able to help them transition into the next steps. And also just putting them in a position where when others want to help them, they are actually able to do that so that we can process whatever payments that come into them and then allow them to be able to operate a lot more efficiently. But what we have seen with COVID-19 is perhaps the biggest transformation that has been accelerated is the ability to run online businesses. We've had a proposition called Simply Blue at Standard Bank, which has kind of been selling, but not as fast, which is really an out-of-box capability that allows small businesses to set up an e-commerce presence and then run their business online. And since COVID-19, we have actually seen so many businesses take up this capability because a lot of small businesses have had to rethink and reimagine the way they run their business. Even those whose business model was actually a physical model, they've had to, if I use a Williams way, to go to a digital model where actually you bring in some online presence and you actually then consolidate that with some sort of physical distribution to supplement the business model. So we've been assisting a lot of small businesses to do that in a more partnership model versus the traditional role we used to play as a bank, as sort of just doing transactional banking and loans.
Yeah, and I think the great thing I see across all three of your businesses is how you're extending beyond your core purpose and brand. You've gone beyond telecom, beyond just core functionality of banking services to really make your proposition and overall a lot more stickier, for small businesses. But one of the things that we have seen through the coronavirus crisis and our living with our legacy of lockdown survey showed that something like nearly 3/4 of the businesses that we surveyed said that they've lost customers during lockdown. And one of the things that they would look to partners like you for is to help them try and win back lost customers. So tell us, each of you, what you're doing specifically to help small businesses to win back their own customers that they've lost through the period of lockdown and the pandemic. William, let me start with you. So how does Vodafone treat churn?
Yeah, so thanks, Paul. So during the COVID, we at Vodafone, we launched what we call VHub. Basically, that is a kind of like a consulting capability that allows the small businesses to get onto our portals and ask for help about how to go about running their businesses. So that's the one thing. The second thing that we have started doing here locally with our business acceleration capability and center is just get together with SMEs and help them think on how they can find pockets of value in this challenging time. And also extending a hand of help in many ways to those that have not been able to sustain business operations in one way or the other. So we get into sessions where we help them to co-create ways in which they can find a meaningful way to attract their customers back. And we look at how we can support them in potentially helping them to find customers using different means than expecting a customer to walk into a store or into a physical presence. And such, that's one way that we've been thinking about how to support the small business partners that we have. We're collaborating across the board with the Ministry of Small Business at this moment, just to be able to understand intently what some of the issues and critical challenges that they are facing are. And in certain instances, we also have started a joint sessions and joint project where we are beginning to work in squads to find ways of solving those kind of problems. And you know that just before we got into the COVID, one of the things we found was, as I think you said and Komoza said, the biggest issue is financing that the SMMEs are struggling with. And even now, in this time of them thinking about going back to business, is where am I going to get that first 5,000 rands that I need to go buy the stock that I need to put on the shelves? And of course, the banks have been there to help. The government has come up with some ways to support the those that are struggling at the moment. But the most critical thing that we see is, because people have lost confidence based on what has happened, is helping them to regain that confidence that says, if you thought about your business in this way, in that way, in that way, this is where the customers have moved to, and that's where you can find them. And that's critically important at this moment, because the way in which they used to, open up shop and people used to walk there because there's a lot of footfall in the malls, that's no longer happening. So how can we put marketplaces that can allow the products that they sell to be visible in more than just one location? But
exactly, it's about trying to put the malls online and about connecting buyers and sellers in the virtual world. And if I come to you, that's pretty much what you're portraying Yep as doing. If I was just looking at some of your advertising for Yep earlier today, and you portray Yep as a marketplace. It's where buyers and sellers come and interact, and I think that kind of builds on what William's just been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually does that. But what we also did as part of the same platform was to see if we can find a way of creating further opportunities for these small businesses, because a lot of large enterprises usually buy from small businesses. So we've got what we call a bidding functionality. We became the first host or tenant, where telecom sort of started almost diverting some of their own procurement spend towards small businesses via the same platform in essence, where we would normally have large enterprises doing the work. So take an example of a plumber or an electrician as an example, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, such as Pufada. We've got an exchange close by. We needed someone to actually do some work. Would actually just procure the business via small businesses. But just at the beginning of lockdown as well, as we're chatting with the departments of small business as well, interacting with them, we also helped them to create an online registration platform for small businesses to have access to emergency funding during lockdown that would actually sustain them during the lockdown as well. But there's also a couple of sort of initiatives that we've always had within the business as well, such as Future Makers as well. It's a program that we've always had where we're supporting a lot of tech startups. And that program was also extended to any other kind of business or small business that we've always supported via either, businesses that are maintaining our own infrastructure as an example, or businesses that are just buying stuff from us. Through that program, we've been able to help them as well. But also we realized during the lockdown as well is that most of these businesses were not operating, and yet they had fixed costs such as paying for their own connectivity services that we provided to them. So we're able to divert some of the fixed connectivity solutions that they normally use in businesses into mobile connectivity solutions, so that they don't lose out on that as well. And also look at sort of, let's call it payment holidays as well, just to sustain them for a while in essence. But also over and above that, there's just a fund that we usually support as part of Telkom, which is called IDF as well, that actually looks at supporting startups, but also sustaining them, those ones that have actually come through the funnel in essence, in terms of how we support them financially to actually become much more sustainable as well. And quite recently as well, there's a small business industry body within South Africa that we work with, where we've actually almost like committed to paying small businesses within the first 30 days of actually supplying us, in essence, with products and services, thereby releasing cash to them much more earlier than they normally wait for like a 90-day payment period. which actually helps them to become sustainable as well. There are a couple of things that we've been doing just to make sure that they really become sustainable and we really become their own friends as well, over and above creating an online mall for them.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal, and I think one of the great beauties that all three of you have is you work for businesses and for brands that really have an opportunity to re-inject, not just capital but expertise and a lot of the things that entrepreneurs and innovators need, to get new small businesses and startups off the ground. If I can ask you, Kamoto, how specifically do you at Standard Bank, support enterprise and entrepreneurs and startups specifically?
Yeah, Paul, the most important thing we recognize as Standard Bank is that we only have clients when they have businesses. So if they are not in business, then they can't be clients. So we recognize the important role we play being in the middle of the economy. And let me use an example to illustrate this. So when you look in the ecosystem of housing or the home ecosystem, you've got a lot of electricians, plumbers, that are SMEs that provide services in that business. Now in South Africa, we've got the biggest market share in home ecosystem. Now, what role could we play to create a market for them? Almost every house that gets sold, the way an exchange happens, there's some sort of plumbing that must be done to renovate it for the new, or some sort of electrical services that must be done. Now, we look at that ecosystem and we say, what can we do to connect all players in the ecosystem so that everybody benefits in that ecosystem? So we've then created this proposition called Luxi, where we then connect the plumbers with all the homeowners so that for every house that gets sold that we fund, we can actually bring all the SMEs to benefit in that interaction. Especially now where a lot of households, it's not top of mind that they must actually do a bit of electrical work there, a bit of refurbishment there. So you have to be very deliberate about this. And in that type of thinking, you can then have all the players that are in that home ecosystem, whether it's the attorneys, the electricians, the buyers, the sellers, everybody getting some sort of value. And this is how we think about which ecosystems can we focus on, where we actually connect a lot of the players and we can actually create value for everyone. We benefit, of course, when all of them are making money in that ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great beauties that all three of you have. You all have all those services and trades within your network that you can, amalgamate them and aggregate them, for the benefit of the small, not just the small business customer, but also for your consumers as well. I'm conscious of time. We've got about 5 minutes left, and there's one particular question I want to get to all three of you, and all three of you have touched on your links with the Department of Small Business and government and so forth. You all represent very high profile, large and trusted brands in South Africa. And I'm sure, if there were members of government or ministers listening to this session this afternoon, if you could say one thing to them that would, get government to do more to help reignite local economies, what would your wish be to the people in power to help, get the world back on its feet after COVID? Let me start with you, William.
Well, I'll say that at this moment, we need a lot of simplification. In the pre-COVID world, it's always been very hard for our SMEs to know where to go, to fill 5 forms, 20 pages each, just to be able to know and to find a service. And I'm asking of our government now to really dial up the digitalization of all those services that serve the SMEs and make them simpler in a way that they can find them at their fingertips. It's already hard enough just to survive in being able to live day to day and run a small business or start a small business. The complexity of all of what they have to do. If you look at the tax regime, if you look at what you have to do with CIPC, need to look at what you have to do with legal and lawyers and all of the things. And then, of course, you have to open a bank account as well. So, there are just a lot of things that SMMEs have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And if we can just focus on simplification, and now that COVID has taught us that we need to be able to do business anywhere, anytime, and stay always being connected. If we can just move all those offices that people have to travel far and far to go to, and move them to a digital environment and with a lot of simplification. And by the way, these tools are already there. You've heard Komoto talk about what they've done in terms of creating an ecosystem. You heard what Lunga is talk about, what we have been doing in creating platforms to connect, suppliers, buyers, and the whole ecosystem. We have these platforms. We can bring them all together and open them to the SMEs in an integrated way, just to simplify how they can access the services that are behind them.
Yeah, I think you make an absolutely fabulous point there. Lunga, what would your wish be to people in power to, help you reignite local economies all over the country?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. I sort of concur with William, right? I mean, the first one is just simplify government services, right? Cut the red tape in terms of how small businesses have to actually comply and actually deal with government, such as business registration, such as claiming, small things such as claiming for VAT, right? It's such a slap for small businesses because they actually have to go and queue in instead of actually trading, when those processes could actually be digitized by government as well. But also, I think one thing that government could actually do, which is, a bit of economic and or of political as well, where they could encourage large enterprises to really support, small businesses in terms of how they procure the goods. But they could also lead from the front, right, by really doing that. They already have a lot of what we call a tendering system, which has got its own problems as well. But, there's a lot of things that they can do in that space that will really support local small businesses as well to make sure that they can become much more sustainable. I think simplification, give them access to markets, and really get large enterprises to really support local. I think that would go a very long way in South Africa. If you do that, they'll become much more bigger. They'll contribute significantly to the local GDP. And what better way, than to actually, grow the economy than through small businesses rather than large enterprises.
No, that's a really good point. And Komoto, what would your number one wish be to, if you had 5 minutes with Cyril right now, what would you be asking him for?
Yeah, no, Paulie, if I was sitting at the union buildings there, sitting on his chair and thinking about how I use my muscle of legislating to actually make things better for the country, I concur with my colleagues. I think the first one, formalizing the SME sector is quite an important. And there's a lot of good evidence in research that shows that the more formalized, the better the connection with opportunities, and then the better the businesses are able to operate. The second thing, which is probably something that can be legislated, is just to pay small businesses on time, because that will significantly improve liquidity position. So I'll make it legislation that all small businesses are to be paid in 15 days. And those that can demonstrate that they pay within that time, then not only are we gonna actually parade them as great businesses, but maybe we'll give them some sort of tax relief as well. Because I think if you solve the cash and working capital problem, they are most likely going to run a bit longer than the current situation we see with small business across the continent.
Fantastic. I'm sad to say it, but our time is up. But I just want to thank all three of you for your time and for your responses. It's been a great session. I could easily carry on this for another hour or two, perhaps over a nice glass of South African red wine. But I'm going to ask you each one quick question just to finish with, just a quick 10-15 second answer from each of you. And we've asked this a lot of our guests. What are you most looking forward to in 2021? Lunga, let me start with you.
Well, if we can find a cure to coronavirus, right? That's my main wish, so that we can really, there's the new normal, as they say. A lot of things have really happened in the past 6 months that have really allowed digital transformation. We'll just have to find some sort of a cure to this health pandemic that we have worldwide. And I think we'll go somewhere towards really a speedy recovery. That would be my only wish. Thank you.
Yeah, I think many people would agree with that. We need a cure. William, what would your wish be for 2021, apart from a cure for COVID?
No, I would say, Paul, what we need is a mindset for growth. I think that when we don't think that we can see growth in this next normal or new normal, the economy will reflect our mood as a collective. And therefore, we need to know that COVID is here and it's going to take a long time for us to get to a vaccine. We need a mindset for growth and to go out there and find the opportunities that have been created by this unfortunate environment. And I dare say that digitalization and the digital world, it's a world that is really has some opportunities for a lot more people. So I'm just hoping that we can have a mindset for growth.
Fantastic. And Kamotso, I'll give the last word to you. What are you most looking forward to in 2021?
I'm looking forward to just having a good old cold beer with no masks, with mates at the bar and watching soccer. As simple as that. Thank you, Paul.
I'll drink to that. And gentlemen, I just want to say thank you again for your time today. One of my wishes for 2021 is I can't wait to get back down to Cape Town and to South Africa and to enjoy good wine and good beer and good steak. And hopefully I'll get to see the three of you next time I come down. And thank you for your time today. It's greatly appreciated. We really appreciate having you here.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you,
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Speak to you again soon.
Cheers, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.